So welcome back everybody to Forza Horizon 4, and yeah, we're doing another seasonal championship today, and it's going to be Muscle Beach, where we're going to be in C-Class retro muscle cars, so should be a nice variety of cars to choose from in that, and yeah, we're going to eventually get there in this Lexus ISF as that Charger gets out of the way. But yeah, don't expect the quickest of vehicles in this championship, but we're going to have plenty of V8s and rear-wheel drive to mess around with. Though it's not going to exclusively be V8s, because I'm pretty sure there's a certain Buick that is going to be available. So let's take a look at what we can choose from and the events we're going to be at.
Better than a seasonal championship in the summer? Not much really. Have fun.
Will do. So yeah, they've got the Buick Regal GNX, which has a really rather powerful turbocharged V6 engine. Then we got the Impala Super Sport from Chevrolet, along with the Ford Crown Victoria, two cars that we used as police cars, or still are even, maybe. And then we got a SVT Cobra R, we've got a VK Commodore, a Holden VL Commodore, so two Commodores from Holden there, just via different companies that they were under Holden, and yeah, Pontiac Fiber Trans Am GTA. So yeah, the Trans Am there has the least amount of power, as you can see. I think we'll go for the Buick Regal first. It's one of my favourite muscle cars on this game, even though obviously it kind of breaks the rules in terms of being a muscle car because it doesn't have a V8, but it does have plenty of power and plenty of torque, rear wheel drive, and it's got an incredible looking body as well. This could easily be a stand-in for a movie villain, as you know, like a possessed car, or even for a normal villain's mode of transport, to be honest, because yeah, it looks menacing even in stock form. So let's see if it can back up those looks with a win. Obviously this is the oldest, I think, here. That doesn't mean it's not going to be quick. It's easily one of the fastest cars from America in the 80s. Which I know isn't saying much, because pretty much the fastest car ever was in most decades would be a Corvette. I'm pretty sure this could outrun a Corvette from the 80s. As you can see, it's extremely low revving, 5,000 RPM rev limit, which is no surprise given it's from America and it's from the 80s. Struggle to find many cars from America pushing more than 6,000 RPM from before the 2000s. Fair bit of understeer there. We have more power than the Mustang, and we've got another Buick beside us. Can't quite see what's up front yet. Because it's such a low revving car, even below 4,000 RPM you can barely hear the engine on this vehicle. Really hear the engine above 4,000 RPM. Looks like we're battling for first place from a Trans Am, which, despite having the least power here, is probably one of the better handling vehicles, because it's obviously really rather low down in terms of its suspension and its centre of gravity. Yeah. So it's not particularly slow at the top end either, so it's going to be a job to catch up to it. We're pretty quick through that chicane there. Just about have the braking there. You see, this is no slouch for a more than 30-year-old luxury barge. What always amazes me about certain American cars is that Buick can come out with this in the 80s, and it's got 300 horsepower, and it's one of the quickest of its type from in terms of 0 to 60 and the like. But then Chevrolet comes along with the Monte Carlo SS, and it's not even got 200 horsepower, and it's awfully slow. It's just that stark contrast between the two. Despite both of them being two-door rear-wheel drive front engine vehicles that are going from being a bit more upmarket. So yeah, nonetheless, there we go, a comfortable first place position there, more than 2 seconds ahead of the Pontiac Trans Am, which held on to second, then a Ford Mustang in third, the VK Commodore in fourth, and a Buick Regal again in fifth. So 2 Buicks in the top 5 there, so it's fairly convincing that they're one of the better cars on this championship. But nonetheless, let's get on to the second race. So the Buick Regal coming good there, which is no surprise when you consider it can do 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds, which is quick even by today's standards. So yeah, I think we'll get in the Chevrolet Impala. Don't think we've raced this before, but yeah, it's got 260 horsepower, so not quite as much as the Buick there, and it's heavier and it doesn't have as much torque, but handling wise it is slightly better, braking wise it is also slightly better. Not all that much worse in terms of acceleration, but it is not quite as good in terms of speed, but hopefully the handling will make up for that. So let's see what it can do. So yeah, this is another car that I'm glad has returned from previous way older Forza games. Before this game we didn't have this car on a Forza game for a long time, so yeah, really pleased that it's on this game. Got added a while ago via I think the festival playlist. So let's see what it can do on this race. Now it'll be quicker than the rival Crown Victoria, just because it's got more power and it's slightly less in terms of weight. It's also notably more racy at the top end because it's got more in terms of RPM. A lot of Trans Ams, at least 2 up front, might be even 1 at in the lead. But like the Crown Victoria, this has a massive Achilles heel in the form of its gearbox. Really long ratios and yeah, not all that many gears to play with. Oh, bit of a crash there. Was close. Did not know there was another car on the other side of the road there over that crest. Good job I didn't pull too far over to avoid that BMW. Oh dear, wrong side. I think this car only has 3 gears, which is quite annoying. And you can't get the most out of that 260 horsepower. It's also a bit of a boat as well. Always surprises me that this weighs less than the Crown Victoria, considering it looks such a much larger vehicle. But luckily it is, and it's gonna give us the win. Yes? Yes. Not by quite the same margin as the Buick did, but a win is a win after all. But yeah, less than half a second in between us and the Mustang, which came in second this time round. The Commodore came in third. The Trans Am came only in fourth this time, and Crown Victoria surprisingly got into fifth, which, considering how underwhelming that car is in terms of its acceleration, is quite surprising. So yeah, there we go, 40 points for us. The Mustang's 8 points behind, and the Commodore is a massive 16 points behind, along with the Trans Am, and another Trans Am is 18 points behind. So yeah, there's not much to play for in going into this final race, but nonetheless, let's see what we can do. Right, so we've had a Buick, we've had a Chevy. Alright, we've got three more of our manufacturers really to choose from: Holden's, Ford's, or a Pontiac. Now, technically, I like Pontiac quite a lot, but is it any better than a SVT Cobra? Now, this has very little in the way of weight, decent amount of power and torque, and yeah, fairly decent acceleration, handling, and braking. This has slightly worse in the way of handling, less in the way of power, but more in the way of torque, but also more in the way of weight. Now, yeah, 4.8, 4.5. Yeah, the SVT Cobra has the better braking, the better acceleration, launch and speed. It has the launch, doesn't quite have the speed, but I doubt speed's going to be a major factor in this, and with this having less power and more in the way of weight, I think the Ford will be able to get to its power quicker. So yeah, let's get in the Cobra. Memory doesn't serve me well as to whether or not we've driven one of these in a race before, but they are quite underrated. I know the Fox body wasn't highly rated by a lot of Mustang enthusiasts, but yeah, this is easily one of the better uprated Mustangs out there, especially from before the 2000s. It's certainly better than the King Cobra from the late 70s, which I still rate as one of the worst ever cars, especially that we've had to deal with on these games. Oh, big crash. That's not going to help. A bit of understeer there. Does have a pretty good sounding V8 though. That's even more higher revving than the Impala, not by much. But it certainly makes a difference if you want to rev the engine as much as possible to get whatever you can out of it. Surprised we're not catching up to a Crown Vic as quick as we are. Considering we don't have all that much in the way, less in terms of horsepower and significantly less in the way of weight. Oh, brakes. Come on, this is supposed to be better braking than other cars. Didn't seem to work very well there though. There's two cars in front of us that we were weighing up the options with. Past one of them. Got an Impala in second. I have no idea what's in first. Sure, we'll catch up to the Impala, but it looks like another Trans Am in first, which might be impossible to catch up to be honest, given how little time we've got left. That's unfortunate. I think the crash at the beginning is what held us back, and I think that's actually a Buick in first, so might have been even more difficult to gain on. Was it a Buick? Yes, it was. So yeah, I think that crash at the beginning really did hinder us. It let the front of the pack get away from us, but third place is not hardly the worst place we could have come in, and yeah, we've been beaten by 2 cars that we used before. So there we go. That's kind of weird, but we did at least beat the Trans Ams, which we were weighing up whether or not to use or not. Don't know if they'd have been better, but if we'd have had the same crash as we did at the beginning with that car, then we might well have been worse off, so who knows. But nonetheless, that gives us 14 points, gives us 54 overall, still 10 ahead of the Buick, and 10 ahead as well as the Pontiac, and 14 ahead of the Impala, and another 22 points ahead of another Trans Am. So yeah, on the whole, fairly impressed by those cars. Buick is probably my favourite of the 3, just because it's got so much more power than you would ever expect a car from that time to have, while having acceleration that would rival some supercars from that time. So yeah, that's a cracking car. So if you've never given these cars a try, I do recommend them. Give this championship a try as well, because it will get you to 50% to get the GMC Cyclone. And nonetheless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.